rise and join us in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And before we start our meeting, I'd just like to read two condolences that we have to unfortunately send to two of our very long active community volunteers, uh, which is you don't see this often, but anytime that somebody passes away, it's not a good thing anyway. We always miss these people, and it seems like sometimes the older we get, these are the people that we grew up with now, and it wasn't just somebody we knew or heard of. It's somebody we've worked with, and in this case, some of us that have been around municipal government for a little while knew both these people very well. And the first one, unfortunately, and I hate reading these, I really do, is the passing of Roy Leonard. Roy was a heck of a guy. He was involved with the town for many, many years. He was our town electrical inspector, and he was there, I believe, about 20 something years that he was our electrical inspector. But Roy was active in all sorts of civic events. He was King Lion of the Lions Club. He was a board member of the Stoughton Chamber of Commerce. He was also a past trustee of both the Goddard Memorial Hospital and the Goddard Memorial Hospital in Stoughton, and also Cardinal Cushion in Brockton. He was a director and trustee of the Randolph Savings Bank, and it says in his obituary, when he had free time, he enjoyed spending time with his family, which he was very, very busy. Roy's the father of Jim Leonard and his wife Melissa of Stoughton, Donna Holt and her husband Richard Holt of Middleborough, Richard Leonard of Taunton, and the late Mary Lieu Leonard. He was the brother of Earl Leonard of Lake Placid, Florida, Barbara Leonard of Stoughton, and the late Charles Leonard, Dorothy Daly, Gertrude Leary, and Melvin Leonard Jr. He's also survived by 7 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren, and many nieces and nephews. Scott will remember because he was active at the same time I was before we really got to be accepted by some people. Roy Leonard and Jim Callanan were, in my book, Mr. Christmas. Each one of them in their own way was Mr. Christmas. The Christmas parade started with Jim Callanan putting it together back in the 80s, early 80s. And it was a great, great time, great parade. It was the first we had had. The Chamber of Commerce was very involved then. And I'm hearing that my voice is garbled. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you good, Joe.
Okay, all righty. It was they did great things with the Christmas parade. And then Roy Leonard, who was the electrician in town, took it upon himself to bring his cherry picker into the center of town. And we had then the best lights in downtown that we had had in years. Back in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, I tried to do that. We got a good start on it, but then miraculously something happened to our Christmas decorations that they disappeared. So it's a definite loss for the people of Stoughton with the passing of Roy. He was one of those guys that he was always there for anybody in Stoughton that needed something, whether it was a late call because they had a power issue at their house or something like that, or working on committees here and there and serving in the electrical department and inspector. He was just it's a great loss to the town. And the other one is Daniel McLaughlin. And Daniel McLaughlin was many years as the chair and vice chair of the 4th of July festivities. And Dan as well was a member of the finance committee, town meeting. And again, it says that in his obituary that unfortunately Alzheimer's cut his fun much too short. And I'm quoting, no more hat tricks at the Erie or in the street down when there was a court. He left us a lifetime of memories for anyone who knew him as well. His final Irish goodbye, leaving us all without saying farewell, a loving husband to Pat for 46 years, to Terry and Susan and Bob, incredible dad. And for Shannon, he was quite simply the greatest papa anyone could ask for. He was Dan the man, the myth, the legend, and for the most, let's to make a toast, and for a life well lived, which he did the uttermost. Dan was predeceased by his wife, Patricia, and he is survived by his daughters, Teresa McLaughlin of South Yarmouth, Susan McLaughlin, Glover, and her husband, Robert of Sandwich. He was the brother of David and John McLaughlin, and his late twin brother, William McLaughlin. He also leaves behind his granddaughter, Shannon Glover, many nieces and nephews, and he has cherished his dear friends, David and Marion Healy. He is the closest friend to the late William Norton, another active member in our town who passed all too soon, in addition to a legion of friends he had throughout the years. And unfortunately, both of these services will be private due to the COVID outbreak again. But it's not. It's very unpleasant when you know two people so well and made such a difference in our town. And to see them both gone within a couple of days. We have a lot of good people in our town. The faces are changing, but the dedication is still there. So I'm glad that we could remember Roy and Dan and take a moment of silence to honor their memory on behalf of the town and the residents of Stoughton. Thank you all. Okay, let's get into. So we'll call the meeting to order of the Stoughton Select Board, January 10th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in compliance with Governor Baker's declaration of June 16th, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency and extended until April 1st, 2022. This meeting will be conducted virtually via Google Meets for those who wish to participate remotely. It does list our address and the dial-in number. The meeting will be recorded by Smack Cable Television and may be rebroadcast live, and may be live streamed at StoughtonTV.org. A recording of the meeting, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceeding will be posted on the town's website and/or Smack as soon as possible after the meeting, if live broadcast or live streaming is unsuccessful. The times are approximate and items may be taken out of order at discretion of the chair. So, all right, so with that, I will ask if there are anyone here that has any citizens' comments or request. Citizens' request.
Joe, do you want to poll the board first?
Okay, I open the meeting. We'd have a vote to open it. Sure. All in favor of opening the meeting? Scott?
Aye.
Steve?
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes.
Lou?
Yes.
And the chair votes in favor. All right, so with that, 7:35 is citizens' request. Is there anybody that has any citizens' requests? I see Mr.
Yes,
Angelini.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Miss Walsh, go ahead.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. My request is, why did the sewer work on Route 27 stop, and then they started with a gap down 10th Street?
That was it's not a request, but I'll answer the question. That was done as a result of Mass Highway that didn't want them on the main road during the holiday breaks. So they took a break and they went on to 10th Street and started doing the work on 10th Street so they could keep moving. And they have since been back on, as of today, I see them out there on right outside my office building. They're working on Park Street again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Anzavino, I see you have your hands up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only called because I had it on TV, and I can tell you that the audio on TV is no good. That's
Okay.
why I logged on. I was going to just watch it.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah, we still struggle with that issue of the audio, and we're going to have to do something, because every time we try to do something, John, it just seems like it works great for a while, and then we have an issue. I'm not
yeah,
sure.
I know. I just thought I'd let you know, because I put the TV on and it was bad.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it, John.
All righty.
All right. Anybody else on citizens' requests? Or I don't see any hands up. All right. So with that, I'll start with select board comments, and I'll start with Mr. Gito.
I'll say again that citizens need to know that February 1st is voting time for the fire station. And I have a few people that contacted me that didn't know that. So I don't know. I'm sure that we've been trying to get the word out, but maybe we need to put more effort into it, or maybe people just have to wake up. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gito. Ms. Roberts.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I wanted everyone to know that the REMAP, Racial Equity Municipal Action Plan program grant that we were involved in, the core group in town, is coming to an end. So this week we'll be doing our final presentation, basically our lessons learned, fine-tuning our recommendations to the REMAP team in other towns that were involved in the program. From that point, we will present to you, the select board, and the residents that are watching on TV, that whenever you have availability to schedule us in as an agenda. But most importantly, the program is coming to an end this week, and Wednesday is our presentation to the other towns that are involved in the program.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Mr. Cavey.
I have no comments. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Carrara.
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And I will have a comment that I wanted to send out the town manager's way. Town manager is well aware. He has about this more than she cares to hear. I think I talk more about trash in the streets than I talk about the budget. But there was quite a mess I saw recently, and made phone calls and emails and was asking for something to be done. You just sometimes get tired looking at it. And DPW went over and above. They went up there and picked up all the trash. This is a result of rubbish containers that were overfilled. And people just seem to think that, when it gets filled, you just keep putting more trash on top of it. And these are the things that I've always said, if we're going to attract business to our town, if we're going to go up and try to get biotech, the last thing we want them to do is ride through some of the areas of our town. I mean, I would hope that people would police their own neighborhoods. I know I do. It's not a big street, but when I see something, I stop and pick it up. And maybe if we do that a little bit, it'll make a big difference. But so, Madam Town Manager, if you would, I did send an email out, and I think it was very clear how happy and ecstatic I was with the lettering I used. But if you could just take back to Paul Jaffoon and everybody over at the DPW, my thanks for getting all that done.
I absolutely will. And they did that the day before the snowstorm on top of it.
Exactly.
They did it in the middle of getting ready for snow prep. So that, and also Dana in our code enforcement is working out there as well to work on the issue of those bins. So thanks for making us aware of it, Chairman McCrisky, and thanks to I'll pass along thanks to DPW for getting right on it.
Great, thank you. So with that, we'll switch over now to the town manager for her comments.
The only comment is a reminder from Paul and Newt that the third quarter real estate and personal property tax bills were mailed December 31st. They're due February 1st, but also be aware your fourth quarter bill is in there with the third quarter bill. So don't forget the fourth quarter bill. Sometimes those get lost in the shuffle. And that is it from me.
Okay. Before we go into the budget discussion, I just wanted to thank my peers for bearing with me on my absence. And I must say, I thank Janice Bruce, who was in charge of all of our constituent services, health and elderly, and all the good things that we count on. She had actually encouraged me to get tested for COVID before I had a family event. And I said, that's a pretty good idea. I did it, felt fine, had no symptoms, no thought of anything. But when I took the test, I was positive. And the next day, I felt like I had COVID. And I did receive both of my vaccines. I was waiting to go for my booster. And somehow, I believe I did get it from a doctor's office. That's the only place that was really outside my comfort zone. But maybe not, who knows? We don't know where it comes from. But I want to just take this opportunity to thank you all and to encourage people. If you haven't got your shots, really consider getting the shots. Get your vaccines. They do work. And I can only, the way I felt, for about a week, I can only imagine what it would have been if I didn't have the vaccines. Because they say it was like getting a bad cold. Well, I can tell you, folks, I've never had a cold like that, ever. I mean, it was just brutal. And but I want to publicly thank Janice for putting the prod there that said, hey, why don't you do this to be safe? And it was a good thing to do. So again, thank you for bearing with me. I know that you folks have done some quite a bit of work on the budget. I did meet with some people myself on the budget and with the town manager. All my questions basically have been answered. So what I'd like to do is just lean on you folks because you did leave this session knowing where you let off and what you were going to be doing. I'm not privy to that information. So with that, I'll open this up, the budget discussion up. Scott, did you have a question?
I was wondering if we could handle 6 before we get into the budget, because the budget's gonna probably, it'd be better that we could focus just on that and
Sure.
We take that out of the way, and I don't think it'll take too long.
Sure. No, we can do that. Do you want to lead off?
No, I think I'd like to hear what the status is, and then I'll go from there. I pretty much,
Okay.
When Deborah was running the last meeting, I told her that I made a motion that if it didn't reach its point, that it's an automatic go out to advertisement.
Okay. Well, I did talk because Mr. Cavey is a little bit more of a computer guy than I am. And we actually did do some research on that. Steve, do you want me to move forward with it, or you probably have it all right there with you? Do you want to bring up the time frame and of what took place?
Yeah. I'll bring up what we received from the Chief of Bureau of Local Assessment. I'm going to share my screen here. Actually, give me 1 second. Sorry.
I wish I could know how to do that stuff.
Apologize. It's there it is. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. This is what we received from him. Hopefully, you're able to see the schedule.
Can you make it bigger, Steve?
Probably.
Yeah, it needs to go much bigger. There you go. Beautiful. That looks good from where I am.
Yeah, and so our last meeting, if I recall correctly, was let's see. So if I recall correctly, our request was that this be completed before our next schedule, or our first scheduled meeting of 2022, and that was January 4th. 2022 at 7 p.m. So that was the deadline, and it appears that some of these things were not completed until after that point.
Is everyone able to see those on the timestamps on where it says completed assessment? So we had asked Mr. Hill to have this completed by our meeting. And I believe that was on the 28th in that area, if I'm not mistaken. Was that our last meeting? Or earlier than that?
It was January 4th.
When we met.
No, our last meeting. I forget when it was that we asked Mr. Hill if he could have this done by our first meeting, and he said yes.
12/28.
12/28?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so then of 1228, you can see on here that Mr. Hill had mentioned that he had six of these sessions done, but as of the 3rd, he started the 5th. So if you look to the right column, that was started at 1/3/2022 at 6:30 a.m. Then he went in to the night of the meeting of 1/4/2022 at 4:51 p.m. and started the 6th session, or the 6th module. The 7th module started at 11:31 p.m. beyond the time of our meeting, so the deadline was missed.
Actually, it was 12:20, Joe. Sorry.
12:20.
Yeah.
Okay, so 12:20.
Said he was going to have it done by Christmas.
Okay, so so he did on 12:20. He did take a couple. Then if we backed up, he went into 12:21 and so forth.
We gave him until the first meeting in January.
Right. So I'm focusing on from January 1st on. So, and I did mention the 2 there. So then on the 4th, 4:51, and then on January 4th again at 11:31 p.m. for the 7th module, and then again and on 1/5 at 2:15 a.m. he took the 8th module of personal property and finished it on January 5th, 7:30 a.m. of the 9th module of motor vehicle excise tax. So Mr. Hill made a commitment to have it at our meeting. He didn't. I personally won't be voting to or allowing Mr. Hill to stay there because, I would agree with a statement made by Ms. Roberts is I just don't agree that he has enough time to do this. I mean, and this was last minute, like cramming for a high school exam or a college essay. And, we need somebody that's committed to this job. So with that, any questions of the board or comments? Hearing none. Is there a motion that wants to be made?
I'll make the motion.
All right, Scott.
I make the motion that we advertise for this seat, whereas I call it vacant now because it didn't meet its requirements at the date that was set by the vote by the board. So I say we put it out to advertisement, but I don't want it out there for 2 months or whatever. I think we should regulate it to either a 2-week period and that's it, and then move forward.
All right, well, if you would you take a friendly amendment to the motion? Maybe
Sure,
enough time
sure.
to put it into the shopper's guide, and then we might have some.
That's what I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
out. Whatever
okay.
you think is proper. Yeah.
Yeah, just let's say that we'll have an advertisement out in the next shopper's guide, suburban shopper, and then maybe we've got some other vacancies we can put in there as well.
But I want people to understand that I will not vote on anybody's that is late. If it's a set time to get them in by, and I want that. I don't want it hanging out there that, oh, by the way, this one came email 2 days after we called it.
Right. No, deadline's a deadline.
That's what I want. I don't want anything dragging out anymore. A deadline's a deadline.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second the motion. All right. So
Mr. Rowe has his hand raised.
Well, okay, Mr. Rowe.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Rowe, Town Accountant. If you do advertise, I was informed by the Chief of the Bureau of Local Assessment that they are going to a 1 year after appointment completion of all courses. It's currently 2 years. He believes they're going to 1 year. So the board may want to consider whether they want to make the term for completion of the courses 1 year. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rowe. And so questions of the board. Scott, any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cavey?
The only question I have is, and this is not coming out of left field or doesn't mean to be coming out of left field. I really want genuinely curious. With Mr. Hill being currently, I think, as an assessor, being considered a municipal employee. Are there any additional legal concerns? Is there a process for that we ought to be following?
He's not subject to any as an employee. There are certain we call them volunteers that are considered special municipal employees, but he's appointed by the board. Okay, and it's not the same thing as being in a collective bargaining agreement or anything like that. And again, and this was where it was.
He set his own dates.
What's that?
He set his own dates. He gave us. He'd have it done by the 25th.
Right.
Mr. Gito made the motion, which I seconded and we voted on, and it went 3-2, that we'd give him to the January 4th. So
Right.
I think there was plenty of time beyond the date that he set impractically upon himself. I didn't realize that he hasn't met this prior. I thought it was something that, he had to do in a short period of time. I did not know the history on it. So
Right, and
it is what it is.
and a member of the Board of Assessors had mentioned it to Rick as well several times, and in his words was to no avail. So this isn't something that just popped up, and I think that the board's been more than fair to Mr. Hill. Mr. Cavey, anything else?
No, it really was just more than anything else, just making sure that we were dotting the right I's. That's all.
Ms. Roberts?
I wanted to somewhat summarize so the viewing public knows that we were overly fair to Mr. Hill. He was appointed, I think, approximately 3 years ago, and for best practices, he should have had the course, all modules completed within the first year to actually certify sign off on the revenue. So that means for as long as he has been sitting and attending meetings, he hasn't fulfilled his obligation, which is signing documents, because he couldn't. He wasn't certified to do so. The chairman and the second board member was taking all of, it's not the brunt of the work, but fully completing all the tasks of being a board member of the assessors. So it's not as simple as we gave him a deadline of the first January meeting and he didn't complete it. No, it should have been completed years past. So I just wanted to state that for the record, and just as a summary version, so we would have that information following our votes as a select board.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Mr. Gito?
My only comment is that I think in the advertisement, we should make sure that that people know that they need to complete the entire package within a year, because that's something that's going to change. We might as well get in front of that.
I agree. All right, then. Any other questions, comments? All right, so on the vote to advertise the position of assessor out at the next suburban shopper, and to include any other vacancies we may have, with the inclusion that on the assessor's portion of that advertisement, that we make a special note to let applicants know that they will be required to take a course that has to be completed prior to 1 year of their appointment. All right, is that, Scott, will you take that as a friendly emotion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Could I just
Yeah.
ask
Yes, Mr. Gito.
a question? After the shopper goes out, how long do you want to allow after that? I mean, is it 2 weeks after that? Is it? I mean, it has to be some number after the advertisement, not the day of the advertisement.
Right.
give-
Yeah.
Gave the 2 weeks after the advertisement hits the paper.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
So we should put that in there, Joe, that applications will be taken up to this date.
Okay. Yeah, and what I'll do is we'll pick that date to be approximately 2 weeks after the. Or I mean, what would you think of 3 weeks though?
Now, 2
I
weeks.
know normally when we set out these, we do 30 days for a deadline.
I think there's people that got their eyes on it, and
Okay, all right. Everybody else, if everybody's comfortable, I'm good. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll pick 2 days, 2 weeks rather, in a reasonable amount of time. We'll go like 2 weeks. So if it fell on the middle of the week, we'll go to the end of the week just to round it off. So we'll have full weeks there. So, all right, Ms. Roberts.
Before we finalize the vote, I do have a question. I guess formality, notifying Mr. Heo. He has been notified by the Department of Revenue that he didn't fulfill his obligations. So they sent him a letter and said that he was no longer an assessor.
Right.
But should we do the same thing? So it's kind of like, this is it,
Yeah.
and we sign off on it.
I'll make sure he gets notified.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So any other questions? With that, I'll call on the vote. Mr. Carrara?
yes.
Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Gito?
Yes.
And the chair votes in favor. Okay, so we'll get that taken care of. All right, so moving on to, and I apologize because I am looking at 2 screens. You see my head bouncing around here. I apologize. We'll go on to the 2023 budget. So I will yield to you folks or the town manager. If you, Bill Rowe, any comments that need to be made as follow-ups or anything like that from where we left off last week?
I have nothing to add, except that we continue to look through it, and I don't see any areas to change at this point, and I am comfortable with it moving forward, and I'm willing to listen. I did see some proposals for Mr. Gito. I got them about 15 or 20 minutes before the meeting. The one I didn't have an answer on, I was able to get an answer on, and I certainly can respond to those later if those do come up. Otherwise, there have been no changes since what I presented to you last week.
All right, then. So I'll start with Mr. Gito.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Figuring that this, in fact, was a selectman's budget that's going to go to the Finance Committee, I looked through the budget and I sent something to all of you just a little while ago, and my goal was to put about $40,000 into the Human Resource Department to get the performance standards completed, for as many employees as possible. Hopefully, all the non-union and perhaps others this coming year. We got earlier in the year a blue binder. It was pretty sparse, and I haven't seen anything to fill it up. The second thing is to put $10,000 into the parks budget to keep up the town grounds better, to help the beautification committee by providing more consistently watering those plants that they put in, those annual plantings, and help beautify some of the town-owned property. The town engineer mentioned the town hall. There are other properties like the Pie Park, the old waterworks, the small square at Page Street and Turnpike Street, and many others. So that would be about $50,000. And I went through the budget, and I will make a motion to move that the select board decrease the court time in the police department budget from $10,000 from $75,000 to $65,000, and that I can talk about each piece later, I guess. I have to go through the whole motion. Decrease the overtime in the civilian dispatch budget by $5,000. Decrease the fire alarm duty at the fire department by $5,000. And decrease the contract services in the public health visiting nurses department from $85,000 by $30,000. And move the $50,000 from these actions be redirected to the following in the following amounts to the following departments: $40,000 to the Human Resource Department, in the consulting line item, and $10,000 to the Parks Department in the Parks salary line, temporary wages. Now, that's my motion. I can talk about that if I get a second.
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Okay. Thank you very much. The court time in the police department, the annual actual expenditure was $27,157. The budget was $65,000 in 2022, and the amount used to 11/19 was $16,000. So going from $75,000 to $65,000, I don't think is unreasonable as part of a budget for police, fire, and civilian dispatch of over $13 million. In the civilian dispatch department, the 2021 actual was $115,722. The 2022 budget was $145,000, and the amount used by 11/19 was $42,000. I'm rounding. That budget for overtime represents 27% of the salary line item in that department, which is very, very high. And in the fire department, fire alarm duty budget, the actual expense for 2021 was $2,300. The budget for 2022 was $21,750. The amount used by November 19th was just a little under $1,900, $1,900. And the contract services in the public health, the actual expense in 2021 was $30,000. In 2022, the budget was $100,000, and the amount used so far through November was $2,300, $2,300. So I don't think that those cuts would damage anything. And I think that the things that we wanted to do in terms of putting in place performance standards was one of the things that was we considered very important. It was one of the things in the town manager's performance standards as well. And I guess personally, I think that doing a little bit to help make the town look better is not a bad idea. So that's my motion, and that's my reason.
Scott?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The $40,000 to human resources, I thought that we had a team that was working together, and they did all the stuff like Robin said, the town manager, and that they just had some stuff to tighten up. They were going to put the evaluation stuff together. I didn't know we were going to spend 40 grand now. Is that like paying everybody for the stuff they did back prior? She had them working, little extra. And I don't think it was much to ask when people were sitting at home collecting a full check, working 3 and 2 days a week because of COVID. They could have all been laid off, and it would have been a little bit worse. So, to dig in and be part of the team, I don't think it's too much to ask. I don't think 40,000 should be taken out of other places. I see the town manager has something to say. I'll yield for a second there, Joe.
Yeah, no, Madam Town Manager, you want to
Yeah.
start?
Mr. Carey, you're right, that team actually, even the people who were at work every day, we're still working on that team as extra work. And I have to say, I don't need 40,000 for that. The issue right now isn't the tool. They've actually already voted on a tool that I can start with non-unions right away. The issue is me getting the time to evaluate people, frankly. This budget season has been extraordinarily busy. This tool went into place last fall. We've been working on a fire station. We've been working on a whole host of things. I can't hire somebody else to evaluate my team. I need to do that. And while I respect the importance of that, there's not much I can do. And as far as the impact bargaining with the unions to put these into place, that's on me and Labor Council, who already gets paid to do that, and that's already within our budget. So I really don't envision me spending that $40,000 if it's put in there, with all due respect to Mr. Gito. I don't need someone to design a tool. I have an evaluation tool that my team came up with, led by Deanna, Jack Maycomber, Sue Herman. I mean, a very, very strong team of people, and that's just a few. So I understand the spirit, and I respect Mr. Gito wanting to do that, but I really don't see the need. And I can address when the board is ready, because this was really in response to Mr. Carrera's point, all of those other line items. I did have to make a call on one of them that Mr. Gito sent, but I can address all of the others as well.
I mean, I have to, Mr. Chairman, fall on the town manager's experience, and I know where she comes from, that HR she's very strong in that spot. So, I have to accept the way she did it. I don't want to get in the middle of something and then, we're throwing money at a situation that's 95% there. She had them working on it, and it's nothing against Mr. Gito. I don't think 40,000 can be spent there in that department properly like that. It doesn't seem to be warranted. That's all I have.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to write down. I'm just going to, Deb, if you work with me, I'm just going to go right down the line here and go everybody in order to respond to Mr. Gito's presentation. So, Mr. Cavey, did you have anything?
Let's see, right now the motion includes 2 different reallocations. The only thing I ask, without necessarily having any plan in place, but if necessary, Mr. Gito, would you be willing to accept splitting that motion into 2?
Did you ask me a question?
Yes. Right now, the motion includes 2 different reallocations.
Yes.
And the question I had was, if necessary, I don't have any plan in place or anything, but if necessary, would you be amenable to splitting that motion into 2 motions?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes. Now I'm curious, what 2 motions?
The 2 motions is suggesting is to see whether or not we should put $40,000 into the human resource area as one motion, and the second is to put $10,000 into the Parks Department to help to beautify the town a little bit, and to perhaps help the beautification committee with watering the things that are in the square that they do now. That's the breakup of the motion.
So my comment is, my assessment of Mr. Gito's motion is, I like the idea of putting more funding in HR and to beautify the town, but not take away from our public safety. But even with that said, at this point in time, I have to rely on Dr. Grimm's vision of where she's trying to take the town. This is the operational budget, and how that operational budget is going to fit in with the capital project plan, which we don't have the complete pie to make a decision of where we would reallocate things. Okay, and I think that's important for us to have. We talked a little bit about the revenue projections, and that was a conservative look, and I feel very comfortable with that. And I would like to talk more about the revenue. We talked a lot, each department on the operational budget, but we have not talked about the capital project plan. And I think all of these fit together nicely. But let me take a step back and just kind of break things down. I guess questioning the Mr. Gito's motion. One is about beautifying the town. My question has always been, we have the memorials for our veterans, and it's typically up to the family to maintain those memorials, right? But what happens when the whole family passes away? Whose responsibility is it to keep the upkeep of those memorials? Is it the town's? And if the answer is yes, should we reallocate more funding to do that? So I'll stop there. So that's in direct alignment with Mr. Gito's motion.
Hey, Mr. Gito, did you want to respond?
Not to Ms. Roberts' question, but to the other things, I would be happy to respond.
Okay, well, I'd like to, as well, where we're going through it, give the town manager the opportunity to respond as well,
Okay.
if she so chooses.
So Ms. Roberts, those are one of those things like community adoptive spots. When somebody leaves it, who then takes care of it? If we get calls on one that looks down, and now we will send DPW out to clean it up if we have to. We do have the resources to do that. And again, as Mr. McCrisky pointed out, with a sweeping operation for something that was dirty, we can send people out on an as-needed basis. I do think that we might be able to push those departments a bit harder, our Parks Department, to be a little quicker on responding to some of those situations. And I think a lot of times it's a lack of awareness of them. We don't always see them. And as they get reported, we do clean them up. I also know that it's hard for families all the time to be responsible for it. So it does become sort of on the town to do it. In answer to your question, if nobody else does, we certainly can't turn a blind eye and leave it.
Now, so in all fairness, would that require more dollars, more of the budget to do that?
I don't really think so. I mean, again, on an as needed, if I get a call, I'm going to call over to DPW and say, can you get to the square out on such and such and such and such, and please clean it up? And I've yet to have a situation where the answer has been, we don't have time.
Okay.
If I did have that situation, that would be another story. And as far as flowers and plantings and things like that, could we beautify more? Maybe. I don't think that it would ever hurt. But I do think we have the labor to do it. And I have yet to hear from that department, no, we don't have the funding to buy what we need, or we don't have the time to do it. So I'm concerned that maybe it's an operation I need to be a little more aggressive on, as opposed to money I need to spend.
Okay. And that would also apply to our walking trails and things. So our open space,
yeah.
Open space will take care of itself, but our trails and things like that. And
as you know, we are in some transition with DPW, and as we move into potential new leadership in there, that may be something that I talk to whoever ends up in that position permanently. about prioritizing those things and working those in better into our time management. I am in the process of doing, or Sue Herman just completed a departmental audit, a workflow audit of DPW. I'm in the process of going through that and reading through it. In reading it, I think we do have the capacity to do more than we are. And again, not to disparage our DPW guys, they do a phenomenal job.
Well, they do a phenomenal job, but yeah.
But more from a management standpoint of how to ensure that those tasks are being caught, found. Mr. McCrisky knows a lot of times I don't hear about it till a select board member calls in and says, hey, there's a problem. And so I'm looking at working with that department on prioritizing those types of things during the off seasons when we actually do have a little downtime. Not in the fall with leaf cleanup or in the summer with snow plowing. But, you know, the spring is our pothole repair. But in summer, we have a little bit of a lull time. Is there time that we can do more of that, which is when people are actually out there enjoying those facilities more? I do think that we can do a better, honestly, I think I can do a better job overseeing that.
Okay, so that answers my question about the beautification of Stoughton. And now that was the low-hanging fruit. Now the bigger piece, which is human resource. The human resource department, yeah, I'm going through the remap program, and yes, it may come up later that we're going to recommend a human resource director or a DEI officer, but we haven't even proposed that yet because we don't know what we have to make that proposal. So I'm not going to even address that at this time, but I do want to just question, because that department does a lot. And when I say does a lot, it does benefits. And I may be wrong, but I don't believe so. Don't they also handle the payroll? They handle the payroll system. And typically, the HR department, you know, in other municipalities, the HR department does not handle payroll. You know,
You are correct.
They have a payroll. So they do have a lot on their plate. So I believe that it causes for more of an assessment than more dollars allocated, because you need to be more strategic in where you want to take the department than putting dollars in because you don't know how you're going to divide it. There's also that open question about reporting. FinCom always asks for different reports. We, the select board, always ask for different financial reports is what I'm referring to. But you don't have a director of finance. So I have watched you over the years looking at different areas and reorging, and I see that maybe the next step is for you to look more at the human resource, the payroll, the accounting department, along with the audit department, and that might be coming next. I just don't know, but I'm just saying,
Well, and
being a visionary that you are, that may be the take.
Thank you. You are seeing the beginning of that with Sue Herman's department now being carved out with auditing and analytics. I did toy when I first came at creating a finance director position, but it's challenging. Our town accountant is clerk appointed. We had an internal auditor under the town manager. It would have been very hard to create one finance director position, but what we've done is we've sort of put accounting where Bill can focus on the things he needs to. A lot of the reporting that comes through from accounting. But the question of payroll in most communities, it's either outsourced through a payroll company like an ADP, or it's held in-house through an accounting department. In my experience, it has typically been through an accounting department, not through payroll.
Are we talking about the motion that I put on the floor?
Yes,
Well, see,
yes.
you open it up. Your motion was bigger than the bread basket, Mr. Gito.
It was very specific. It was to hire somebody to help to put together the performance standards that we were promised would be available to us, that has been in the town manager's list for, I think now, a couple of years, and I see an empty book. Now, it's okay if we don't want to do that. I don't mind that, but it really should just be an up or down vote. If we don't want to do that, then just say you don't want to do it. We could call a question on that particular part now and vote on it. But I'm not trying to dissect the entire human resource and finance department. There's $80,000 that I think is probably available to be used for other things. And if not, then that's fine too. It's our budget, and we can do what we want or do nothing at all to change it. That's the fact.
All right. Robin, do you want to respond? You're on mute, Robin.
I just want to be careful. Mr. Gito is saying that he has found money that we could use elsewhere. Nobody's asked me, with respect to the board, if I agree that that is found money. I had worked with the schools. They had actually cut. We were managed to give them the money back to keep them whole. I did not have an extra 40, 50, 60, 70,000. We have been through every single one of these line items. And again, I appreciate Mr. Gito's efforts of scouring the budget, as we have. But that money, I don't want an impression that these line items have all that extra money, because what is being represented as extra money this evening, I don't believe is. And that's a concern to me. Looking at simply where we are at in 2022 at this point, year to date, does not necessarily indicate where we will be at the end. Comparing court time appearance from 20 and 21 when the courts are closed to the huge time we may face once those courts reopen fully. And I may not be able to staff police officers to testify against criminals, or I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to be paying exorbitant overtime to backstaff patrol officers. That court time is up because the police chief specifically wanted it to be that way. So again, I vetted those line items, and the only one line item that Mr. Gito presented that I had not vetted, I made a call to Chief Carroll on the fire alarms, and he absolutely does not want that budget cut. And I actually see he's in the meeting because he's concerned anytime National Grid needs lines down, we have to send somebody out to do that. So I caution everybody on an expression that there's this extra money that was found. The public health does not offset operational budget. That's an enterprise fund. You can cut that, but there's nothing that I can use somewhere else. It just means we're zero subsidizing it this year. We actually had to use COVID money to bridge that. So again, I just ask you to proceed with caution with statements like there's extra money, because I really a little bit, and I know I sound a little defensive, but what I tell you, the team has scoured these line items. We call directors. We ask them if we can do things. I cut other things in the fire chief's budget. He actually sent me notes back and said, please don't cut this instead. We've already been through this dynamic. And if somebody spots something like has happened over the past several weeks and we adjust them, I'm happy to. But I am concerned about that implication that there is money there based on just a glance of year to date and prior years. There's a backstory a lot of times. That overtime dispatch money is subsidized through a grant. That comes back to us. And yes, there's huge overtime in dispatch because we have a lot of people leave. We have retention issues. People leave and become police officers. There are a whole host of reasons. That department triggers huge overtime. So I just caution you on that. And again, it's the will of the board, but you just need to be aware of what it is you may be cutting. It's not extra.
All right. If Deborah, Scott had his hand up before you. If we could just move this along, folks, because we'll be here again.
I just want to give you a little information, Mr. Chairman. I sat on finance for 9 years. I was on public safety probably 4 or 5 years out of that time. And I sat with Chief Larissy. He explained his overtime to us, and Chief McNamara explained civilian dispatch, how brittle it is for her. And the town manager did speak to what I was going to say, that people come in they get their feet wet behind there. They're there for a year and a half, and then bang, they jump. They go to another town. They become a firefighter or a policeman. Now she's left with an open slot that becomes, because the salaries are strong in that department now, the overtime is huge. And it's tough to pull somebody in and ask them to stay when they're basically, they're training on us, learning on us, and then moving off. It's rare that they move out. Like Brian Holmes moved out, he became deputy chief, an officer, deputy chief like that, but most of them are taking off and going to different towns. So that's a touchy place to fool with. There's the civilian dispatch where it affects actually both departments.
Thank you, Scott. Ms. Roberts?
And I was going to say something similar to what Mr. Crowder just said, but I also wanted just to reiterate, we'll be mindful of that. It's Dr. Grimm has stated and restated she has scrubbed this budget. And if the issue is about performance evaluations, I'm all for that 100%. Dr. Grimm has a lot on her plate, yes, but maybe she needs to just make that a priority to give performance evaluations. And she's the only one that can give performance evaluations to her staff. So I'm ready to take a vote on.
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gito, Mr. Gito, if Ms. Roberts could just finish her comment, and I will recognize you, I promise.
I'm prepared to take a vote at this time. I have no further questions or statements. Just take the vote.
The issue is not doing performance evaluations. You cannot do a performance evaluation without having performance standards. That's the thing that I'm talking about. Now, the town manager said that of course we can't do, she can't do, or we can't do, or someone else cannot do performance evaluations for staff. But in order to put the things in place to do an evaluation, you need people to spend time doing that. The town manager and the people who are doing the personnel work in the human resource department, the financial work in the human resource department, apparently don't have time to do that. If we're not interested in getting that work done and don't want to put the people, anyone there, to help get that done, then we should vote against this. I have no problem with that at all. But I remember when we were going through the performance evaluation of the town manager last fall, that this was an issue. And we got this blue book that I haven't seen any pages being added to. Now, if we don't care about that, then that's fine, as I said before. I just went through the budget. Out of a $13.5 million, we're talking about $50,000. And if we can't find $50,000 in $13.5 million, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I thought our job was to try to look at a budget and see what things we might be able to get out of it and what other things we might be able to do. I'm not trying to destroy the town, but it sounds like it. Thank
you. Dr. Grimm?
Actually, we do have the performance evaluation tool, as I said. It's a grid ranking, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's actually, last time I know, we had sent it forward to Jack Dolan. I just need to follow up on where it is for a little bit of advice from a labor attorney to ensure that the way we were going about this was appropriate. That's why you wouldn't have it in your book. That book was produced, I think, before we actually sent that to Jack. That book that you have are the samples of templates for job descriptions, I believe. I think that's the binder that's being referred to. That's still being beefed out as well. So it may not be happening as fast as any of us would like, but it is happening, and it's happening at no cost to the taxpayer, except for a little bit of a review from an outside labor council, which I think is prudent.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that's what the town manager had said to us, that she gave us that the report on the job descriptions were done, and she had said to us that the tools that they were going to use had to either go before town council, or the labor attorney had to look at them, so that you didn't cross over lines in unions and cause problems, because bang, you're going to be right into a lawsuit. So I understand the fine line. I've dealt with this before, and it's not going to be something that, it might not even happen this year, because you have to get it all. This is going to be a hardcore thing. Then you got to see if the unions are going to be willing to accept it, even though the town manager has that right.
That was my recollection also, Mr. Carrera.
Okay, folks.
I'm ready to take a vote.
Okay, I just, everybody's raising their hands, and we're just going to do it. I mean, the information hasn't changed, and I can appreciate Mr. Gito's hard work and trying to do what he thinks is right. So I want to move this issue forward. Mr. Gito, I will give you the opportunity to make one last statement before I call for a vote.
No, I would like to take Mr. Cavy's suggestion to break the question into two.
Okay, go right ahead.
Second.
So we need to vote on that.
Okay, do you want to make two different motions, or was that agreeable that we were just going to split them?
It's a
Agreeable.
motion to divide, so we have to vote.
Can you state the motions, at least for the record keeping? Make sure everybody's on the same page.
If we're going to make two motions, let's split the motions and make two different motions right now. We'll call for the second on them, and then we'll vote on them. Okay, so Mr. Gito, would you like to make that?
And the thing is to split the motion, and I would suggest that we split it, the human resource.
It's your motion, Mr. Gito. You make the split any way you want.
Looks like he might have gone on mute. I'm not sure if that
Oh,
was.
you're on. Yes, Mr. Gito, you're on mute.
Whoops, thank you so much. Split it into the human resource piece, $40,000. And the second would be to split the other part for the $10,000 for beautification.
Okay, is there a second on the motion?
Second.
All right, motion made, seconded. I'm going to call for a vote. On the vote, Mr. Carrara?
We're voting to split them.
On
Right.
the $40,000.
Right. Yeah.
Are we voting on the human resource part of it?
The human resource.
Well, I thought the idea of splitting the motion, we were going to take, a vote for each one. Or if you want, we could take one vote for both the motions. They've been split. We can take the vote, which unless
You have, well, Mr. Gito wants to split them now, so we have to vote on the human resource one for 40, right?
Okay, so we'll call on that one then. It has been split. So on the human resources for $40,000, on that vote, Mr. Carrara.
What is the funding source, though?
It was.
Oh, he already said that.
Well, I mean, because we have Miss LeBlanc is doing record keeping, so, and Dolores as well.
Okay.
They're not going to know how.
Why don't we do this, Mr. Gito? If you could restate your split of the motion and include the funding decrease and what line, where it's coming from in the amount and where it's going to in the amount, so that we'll have an accurate description of what changes were made in the budget.
Let us say that the human resource piece will be funded from the contract services and public health, the fire alarm duty decrease of $5,000, the decrease in the overtime in civilian dispatch. So that gets us to 40, right? Yes.
Okay, so both motions have been made. So on the first one, on Board of Health, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Carrara?
Board of Health, Human Resource.
Human resources.
I'm sorry, Human Resource.
I'm like, where's this one
Yeah,
come
yeah.
from?
This is very difficult.
No,
All right, so-
I'm like you, Scott, so I'm laughing at myself as well.
Oh, I laugh at myself, believe me, every day. Mr. Cavey?
No.
Ms. Roberts?
No,
Mr. Gito?
No.
And the chair votes no. All right, on the second motion,
That would be $10,000 from the police department court time
and going where again?
to the parks department.
Okay. All right, on the motion, Mr. Carrara?
I'm for the idea, but not where the money's coming from. So no.
Well, we'll have another shot at it.
All right, Mr. Cavey, I'm sorry, Scott, did you vote?
Yeah, no.
Okay, Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
no.
Mr. Gito?
Yes.
All right, and the chair votes no.
So my next motion would be that the data in the information systems department, we appear to have about $30,000 that was allocated to the golf course, which appears as though it was a mistake in a decimal point. The for positioner system for golf software support was listed at $33,000. The last few years, it has been just about $3,000 or $3,100. And all of the other items in the information technology list are basically just a little bit more than they were previous year. So we seem to have about $29,600 in that particular line item that appears to be a decimal point problem. So I would take $10,000 out of that department and move it back into the Parks Department. That is my motion.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
All right, motion made for this, seconded for discussion. Scott?
No, I don't have any discussion there.
Okay. Mr. Cavey?
I do apologize for this, Mr. Gito. I just want to make sure I'm understanding where the money's coming from and where it's going to. So this would be $10,000 for the Parks Department. And where is this coming from?
It would come from the Information Systems Department budget for the purchase of services in the Information Service Systems Department. There's about a $30,000 appears to be an error in that line item.
Thank you.
Well, if I can, before we move forward, what appears to be an error and is an error, two different things. So, Dr. Grimm, would you like to address that?
Let me first say what the line item is.
Well,
that,
Lou, I'm just quoting what you said. You said it appears to be a decimal problem, and,
Right.
and it's all right, and the number's not the right number, so we should get the number right before we discuss it.
That's probably correct.
Okay, so that's why I'm asking Dr. Grimm if she could address that.
Unfortunately, I received this at 7:15 this evening, and I'm trying to reach Trish now. I am not comfortable saying it's an error. I know she did need to go up on some line items, so I am not comfortable saying it's an error and not being sure of that. I will continue to try to text her over the next minute or two.
The line item is for golf software support in order to manage a golf course. The budget for 2022 was $34,000. The amount spent was $3,187 and a half. In 2021, it was $3,283. If I have said thousand, I meant hundreds. The 2022 was $3,187 and $3,400 for the budget estimate. 2021 was $3,283. In 2020, it was $3,188, and I could go back. But the budget for 2023 was $33,000, not $3,300. That is the only major change in that department.
Mr. Cavey, were you all set?
What I'm trying to look up is, I see what Mr. Gito's talking about. It may be a decimal error on that list of services. What I'm trying to see is if the number in the actual budget has that error, or if that was an error in something she was calculating to put that list together.
It was, that number was included in the $294,684.
All right, Mr. Cavey, did you have questions still?
No, I have no further questions.
Okay, Ms. Roberts?
No, I have no further questions. I have no questions.
Okay, so with that, then I'll call for a vote. Mr. Gito, if you could repeat your motion, please.
Yes, that we take $10,000 out of the Information Systems Department budget, the purchase of services, and put them into the Parks Department budget, in the Parks Department salary line for temporary wages.
Okay. So the motion was made and seconded. Ms. Roberts, did I call on you? Do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Okay. All right, so on the vote then. Mr. Carrara?
Are we going to get an answer on this later on to see if it's a mistake or it isn't?
I'm trying.
Yeah, I mean, we got to vote on it, Scott. I mean, we got to get the budget done, or we'll be here another 3 weeks, trying to discuss it.
I'll vote no.
Okay, Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yeah, without knowing that answer, if that number is wrong,
It certainly does seem like it's wrong. I mean, I would say that there's about a 98% probability that it's a decimal point problem.
Yeah, probably is. Oh my goodness, this is a tough one.
Well,
I'll have to vote against it.
All right, Ms. Robert votes no, and the chair votes no as well.
thank you for taking the time.
Okay, what is next, folks?
I will still look to get an answer to that question. And at any point, we can look to make adjustments during the year if we need to. So I will not just ignore that question, Mr. Gito, if there is an error in there. There's nothing to be said we can't do a transfer at different points during the year if we need to. And if we were to run short on plantings, and that's the will of the board, for me to look at that in the future, even though it's not officially voted into the budget, I certainly am able to do that. Because it did seem like there was some will for the beautification money. The question of whether or not that's a decimal point, that 285 is the right number. Trish did put that list together very quickly. I don't know if she missed other line items or it's simply a decimal point or what, but I am happy to, in the future, look, and we can always transfer interdepartmental transfers at the end of the next year.
I would suggest that you take a look at the information that I sent you to.
Will do.
Okay. Where are we going from here?
The
folks?
other members of the board.
Sorry, just saw Dolores had her hand raised.
Chairman McCrisky, could we review those motions? I want to be sure I've got them correct. The first one, which was to move the $40,000, that did not pass by 4 noes. And then there was a motion for 10,000.
That was 5 noes.
5 noes. And then the 10,000 from the police department court time, that passed with 3 yes and 2 no.
Other way around.
By 3-2.
Which way?
3 against, 2 in favor.
Okay, 3 no. All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so where are we going next, folks?
Are we going around the horn, Joe, person by person, if they have it? Or
Yeah, right. Well, right now nobody's jumping in with a hand up or asking a question. So if you've got one, shoot it out.
Yeah, I get 2. Through you to the town manager. I meant to ask this, but I knew we were going to go through it tonight, so I wanted to ask this question. It's actually in the town manager budget.
Dr. Grimm, you with us? She's probably on the phone with Trish. You're on mute, Robin.
I'm here. Yeah, we were texting, but I'll get you an answer on that.
It's probably a simple question, Dr. Grimm. In your budget, the line item tuition reimbursement, what's that for? Who's that based for?
Contractual for the SPEA member in my office. It doesn't always get used, but it is contractually available to her. So I am required to budget for it.
I didn't know if that was blanketed for anybody else in the town hall or.
I did not budget. You'll see throughout town, we did education where necessary for certifications and whatnot. But in this particular case, there are education budgets that are that SPEA offers. And if a person has indicated that they may want to do that, we are required to at least cover it in the budget. It has not been used over the past several years, but I have to budget it in the event that that person were to want to use it, or else I would be in a little bit of a jackpot. There's nothing within my budget where I would actually have enough room to offset it during the year if someone did want to use it. So I would be under budgeting.
I haven't seen it in any other budgets, and it was just this one, so I was just wondering why.
There are other budgets that might show some in-service education. They may phrase it differently depending on the type of education. This one in
Well, I
case
know
tuition reimbursement.
in-service training is like a required thing.
Yep.
But tuition reimbursement is like, it's a plum.
Yep, it's allowable by the contract.
All right, thank you. This is going to be a tough thing for me to ask this question or ask a change be made, but it involves Cedar Hill, the general manager going up $10,000. I can, sympathize with certain things, and I have to look at the whole picture. That you apply for a job, you know what you're starting at, you're in a union, you're getting a union raise that's fair amongst everybody in the town. And to set this out at this precedence, at that kind of money, plus he's in a union.
No, that's no longer a union job.
He's not in the,
no, he is not in the union. That is out of the union.
but usually when you get a raise this large, it's you have achieved a certificate, you've climbed up in education. I'm not saying that he's not, that the position's not what's going on. I just think at this time, it's too big of a jump. Some people have to learn that they're in it to gain over a certain amount of time. I'm going to tell you something. There's a position in the town that, in my eyes, I've watched it for a long time. It's probably the grossly most underpaid position, and the person's almost like your right-hand arm. And that's the town accountant's position. People are soaring by the town accountant's position in leaps and bounds. In that position, that person works hard. And if a reward or however, I can't grasp that jump. You want to give a smaller jump, I can understand that, but I'm not going to vote this budget with that $10,000 slam in there. There was a position, that position was supposed to have things online. I put my name out to the finance committee to pay cash for something. But yet we did everything, don't interrupt, we did everything at that golf course with the junk that had to be replaced. That was the term. Thousands of years old, combined 80 years of stuff. I work with loaders that are over 40 years old, and they pump out the work. Don't sell it short. But I cannot give what your position is requiring you to do and get a $10,000 jump, whether he's on a 9-hole or he doesn't equate to a larger hole. I can't hear Joe.
Okay, so the reason is, and this was discussed with the budget team, we got comparables from surrounding municipal golf courses. The position has less full-time staff with it than others, and so we pay less in administrative fees over there. And there has been right now several $100,000 in retained earnings. This is the first year that we have not had to subsidize the golf course from the operating budget. So I understand the concern.
The several $100,000 that's being held in retained earnings is the $200,000 that's supposed to be spent on equipment.
Yes.
That
And
is
we will.
earned.
If you'll notice, there are going to be
earned money.
Yep.
Let's
There are
get
no
that
capital.
right out of the picture.
Yep, there are no capital purchases this year out of the golf course. So you'll see none of those capital purchases.
But that's why there's retained earnings.
Yep.
I don't want anybody to think that golf course made $200 and something thousand this year. There's no way.
And again, that's the call of the board. The budget committee did put that in. It was based on comparables, and that was the reason for it.
It's not everybody's job to comparable everybody. You could take anybody out and you could pop another town and say, hey, do we know how long that person's been there? Was that entered in it? Just because it's a number, it's not an equivalent number. Some people have to work towards something. I had to watch other things go on. I don't want to see that. It's not fair. I can't hear Joe.
Robin, you're on mute.
It's again, it's fully the call of the board. I put it in because I did feel that the position is underpaid. I defer to the board on these things, on something like that. I will say other departments, Mr. Rowe has requested more help. We've given Mr. Rowe more help. And again, we do look at comparables, and it's no disrespect to Mr. Rowe. I don't, that's not the reason one does or one does not get an increase.
I wasn't using his name,
Yeah.
but
No, I know.
using the department. But
We're
now
not
that,
the town accountant
now
is.
that we use his name, I'll agree with
No,
you.
understood.
This guy.
Understood.
Most
And I certainly I don't want anybody to think I disrespect Mr. Rowe.
most underpaid person in town hall. That's all. That's for the amount of work he's done over the years and earned to be where he is. And I see things going by a guy that works hard like that. I don't know. I have to lay down and plead to the board that if we're going to start giving out $10,000 raises where we don't think it's comparable, in 2-3 years, we'll be looking at 100,000, and then when things start climbing, everybody will be out through the roof, and nobody will be working to earn. In the private sector, it's years in, it's education, it's the training, it's your licensing. I've never seen a 10 grand jump like that overnight. It just can't be allowed. I know that's the way it is, but not in the public sector. Mayor Unit said it. You can't reward people in the public sector constantly with money because it's the residents that are paying the freight. So that's
Right.
I want it to be what the proposed asking is, the 1.75, where it would be 76,171.
A motion?
Excuse me, Lou?
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'd like it to remain what the proposed in the book, not town manager request. I'm sorry. That's my motion, that it gets the 1.75 and it ends up at 76,171. Everybody else that's about department heads getting 1.76 or 1.75. And the town manager sold us on that about 2 years ago, and I was on finance, that she says, I am trying to slow down the upper echelon, and this is why we've gone to this and got things under control. And now we're breaking out of the shell. And it, if there was a different number, I might look at it, but not that jump, just because we looked in another town and it's comparable. If somebody wants to leave and go to another town, be my guest. But I guarantee you won't get it.
All right, then there's a motion to be made and seconded. All right, so we'll continue on that questioning. Mr. Cavey, do you have anything?
No.
Ms. Roberts?
No?
Mr. Gito?
No.
Okay, so on the motion, I'll say Scott. You made
Yes.
the motion. Mr. Cavey?
No.
Ms. Roberts?
No?
Mr. Gito?
No.
And the chair votes no. All right, so where are we going now? Scott, you said you had two?
Town manager answered my first one.
Okay.
This was the one that I thought was a little out of hand, but it's just going to keep getting that way. You guys keep doing it, that's fine. Residents will love you.
All right, Mr. Cavey, you have anything?
Scott
What's that, Lou?
said, I don't disagree with you.
Some things have to be based on experience in education.
Right.
That-
I'm not arguing with you.
Okay, Mr. Cavey, did you have anything?
I do not. Thank
No.
you very much.
Ms. Roberts, anything else?
Yes, I wanted to ask some questions about the revenue estimates. So the receipts.
Okay.
Okay. At our last meeting, we did talk about, or we had the presentation on the revenue, the receipts and how they develop their estimates. But I wanted to revisit the meals tax and the payments in lieu of taxes. So let's start with the lower amount. It's payments in lieu of taxes. That's estimated at $55.6 thousand, and prior to it was 58.5. Can you provide a little more detail? So payment in lieu of taxes, that's still the like nonprofits that don't pay into our tax base, but they use our services, right? And so we're through.
Yeah, and I'll let Bill answer in more depth. We have a solar company that gets a pilot, for example. I'll let Bill talk about the parameters of that.
So the other thing is, do we have any pilots coming up? That's
Not new
supposed
ones.
those dollars a little bit more.
Yeah, not new ones that I can think of. Bill?
Not new ones that I know of. It's a hard number to predict. We've just always gone by a historical percentage based on the prior year's number.
Mhm.
We do have a solar project which is 35,000 annually.
Mhm.
Not sure if this is the second year or the first year, but it's hard to predict. There could be some one-time things in the pilots as well, which you don't want to add in for the new budget.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we're just trying to be conservative because you can't budget more from for 23 than your actuals for 22.
Mhm.
We're not going to have 22s in time to the budget, so we go by 21s.
Mhm. Okay. So there are no projects, no pilots that we're planning on starting. I think that that's initiated in the assessor's office, the Board of Assessors. Do they make the recommendations for the pilots?
They're involved in that. We usually approached from a developer will come in and request it. I think there's just the one Heron Crossing Solar. I think that's the only one solar project that I know of. The Stoughton Housing Authority gives us something. Actually, the Taunton Housing Authority, they give us something. There might be some smaller ones as well.
Mhm.
Taunton Housing Authority is kind of managing our authority right now. So.
Okay. So with it being right in the middle of a pandemic, I can understand why we don't have any new initiatives, any new pilots. But I wanted to confirm my thought process. The other one is the meals tax. So the meals tax is the 6.25%, but you look at historical trending to develop your projection. Well, how are our restaurants doing? So we have a lot of, there's an ease of entry for a restaurant, but because we're in a COVID, there may not have a lot of customers, but they have a lot of takeout. So how are those receipts actually trending? How is these businesses actually doing? Are they growing, decreasing still, or staying stable?
We went with 98. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Mhm.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. We went with 98% for the meals because we were of the belief that 23 would be a little better than 21 was. So we use an estimate of 98% rather than 95 for that. But again, the restaurants are still, like you said, in-person restaurants are still not struggling, but it's better than it was. But they're still, I don't think they're 100% of where they were pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
The takeout probably has been constant, but I think we were a little bit surprised that the 21 actuals came in a little better than we anticipated. But I think the 98% is a reasonable estimate.
Mm-hmm. And
Mr.
so,
Chairman, through
so
you,
then we did have a little preliminary conversation about TIFs, and I asked if you could actually include a line item so we could talk about that a little more. And we all agreed that it's kind of challenging for you to tease that out, but we all agreed we're going to have that conversation. So on that note, are there TIFs that are coming off? We have, it's pretty stable.
Well, there's only a couple of TIFs that are general fund dedicated. Most of those go into the MWRA fund, which are not general fund. That's a special fund.
Mm-hmm.
But they are. I think they're all going to be coming off by 2026. And I have some estimates somewhere. Obviously we can't predict what the actual tax is going to be. It all depends on the values and the tax rate. But I think they're all coming off by 2026. And that doesn't increase our revenue at all. It just increases the share, the commercial share that those businesses will pick up will be a little greater than it was. So it'll help the overall split as far as residential versus commercial, but doesn't generate any new growth, for example.
Mm-hmm. So where would what line item would I see that number for TIFs? Is that in the new growth number?
It's in payments in lieu of tax.
That's in the payments in lieu of tax.
Yes. And there's only a few, like there's a couple of businesses that were TIFs were set up prior to dedicating, when the idea came in to dedicate the money to the MWRA water fund. Before the big developers came in, there was a couple of small ones, up on Technology Park, basically.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I did not want to change. I'm not making a recommendation to change any of the projections. I just wanted to have a little more detail about what makes up those two line items, payment in lieu of taxes and the meal. Thank you.
The meals tax is 0.75%. And we do have, I don't have them handy, but I can get you what we've collected so far in fiscal 22. So you can see how that's trending. I think it looked to be pretty close to 21.
Thank you. I have no additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if I can, I saw that Mark Zamanian had his hand up where it's not a public hearing. We're really not taking a lot of input, Mark, but I think you probably wanted to make a comment on a statement that was made. So are you still with us?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing me. My question was actually directed toward the pilots. Do we not, am I wrong, or do we have a pilot on the landfill solar array as well? The Patriot Renewable Solar Array?
Mr. Rowe, could you answer that?
The only one I know of is Heron Crossing Solar. I'm not sure where are they located at the...
No, those would be two different projects, Bill, through you, Mr. Chair. I remember going through the planning department. I know the town manager was pretty intimately involved in that. I don't know if maybe she has the answer, but I was pretty sure there was a pilot written for that. But I could be wrong, and I just didn't want the information to get missed where Ms. Roberts had brought it up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I only see, the cash that comes in, so that's what I look at for that line item. So
Okay, Mr. Gito, any questions?
No.
Okay.
I think I was the first one to start off, so I'm not going to do another round.
I'm just making sure. Okay. So are we all set with the budget, folks? Okay. Hearing nothing. I see some head nodding. Yes, we're all set. So with that, our next order of business would be for 8:35 is the consent agenda. Is the payroll and bill warrants and any other documents to come before
Do
the
we
meeting.
have to vote to accept a budget and to move it forward to the finance committee, or do we not?
Oh, we can. I think we went through the budget.
Look,
Okay.
we don't need it. If we don't need to do it, we don't
No.
need to do it.
No, Mr. Gito, why don't you make the motion?
I don't want to.
Okay.
We have
Right.
we have until the 18th to do that, and I would ask Dr. Grimm if right now I don't foresee any other changes to the budget. If there's not going to be any changes, then I'll make that motion. But if you foresee any reason to be flexible, nope. So then this is going to be going
Well,
to.
why don't we find out whether or not that $30,000 is real or not real?
I think that actually sounds very appropriate. Yeah. So we'll wait until the 17th until I guess 18th because 17th is a holiday. Yeah. So
Okay.
we'll wait until the 18th. Good point.
Okay. All right. So with that, again, consent agenda, item A, pay and bill warrants, and the other documents come before the meeting, and to confirm the Stoughton expects no seasonal population change by July 10th, 2022 for ABCC annual renewal report, and to approve the minutes, the open session of 12/28/2021. Anybody like to pull anything?
I'd like to make sure that the minutes reflect the changes that I sent in and sent around.
Okay. Deb LeBlanc, do you have those?
Yes, the corrections have been made already, Mr. Gito.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Deb.
Sure.
Okay, so with that, I'll call for the vote on the consent agenda. Mr. Carrara?
I had a question on B.
Okay.
Was there any paperwork with that?
I believe that's just a letter that we have to respond, Scott, to the ABCC that we're not going to have any seasonal increases, and that's something that's signed by the
I
chair.
didn't get it in my packet that what it was. I know what it was for, but I didn't know if there was a different, reasoning why they sent it to us.
No, I believe this is one that was just started last year, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong.
That's why I thought it was something different. All right,
Yeah.
I'm set. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So are you voting for or against the consent agenda?
Pat, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Mr. Cavey?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Gito?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, so next order will be to go into executive session for discussion of goals. So
We don't have any information for that session that I know of. We were
Okay.
told that we were going to get all of the input and have a chance to review it, but that did not happen.
okay, let me further up with that, and have it. We'll move it to the next agenda then.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All right, motion made and second to adjourn. On the motion, Mr. Gito,
Yes.
Mr. Carrara,
Yes.
Mr. Cavey,
Yes.
Ms. Roberts,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Good night, all. Be safe. Be happy.
Take care.
Good night.